next beyond the pole, on the other side, close from Middle America. And I think it's quite stunning. It should be an area as big as that unexplored.
Hi, how are you? I hope you always healthy. Welcome to my channel, World History Official. In this video, I would like to talk about the end of heliocentrism. And this is the truth. I will tell the truth. It's painful, but better to get hurt than comforted with a lie. Before I start it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon on my channel if you enjoy. Don't forget to share this information to your family, your friends and everyone. I can't speak, I had speech disorder. So, I'm sorry to use robot voice to you. Many people complain about this. But now, I have buy a better speech software with good voice. I also put the text on the video, so you can read them if you're not comfortable with this voice. So, here we go. Copernicus was a sun worshipper who had been studying Platonic mysticism, which claimed the sun was the highest in the observable universe. It was this that drove him in his quest for heliocentrism, at the cost of the facts. Heliocentrism, the long-standing belief that the Earth revolves around the sun, is dead. The key evidence for it, stellar parallax, does not exist. The implications of this stunning fact are enormous. Not only does this end heliocentrism as a viable system, it also ends our ideas about the distance of the stars. Tycho Brahe has been right all this time. The sun revolves around the Earth and the Earth is the center of the universe. Do you not believe me? I don't blame you. The implications are enormous. But allow me to explain what is going on. Historical context. Throughout antiquity and the medieval era, geocentrism had been the norm. Ptolemy was the great sage of this idea, and his system, which claimed that all celestial bodies circle the Earth, was generally accepted as the standard. However, already in antiquity, astronomers were starting to have doubts, as they were suspecting the planets, Mercury and Venus in particular, were circling the Sun. By the time of the late Middle Ages, it was becoming clear that the planets were indeed circling the Sun and that the Ptolemaic system needed a serious update to accommodate this. Then Copernicus published his famous Revolutionibus in 1543, describing the orbit of the planets around the Sun. However, Copernicus did a whole lot more than just that. He also put the Earth in an orbit around the Sun. And this was a wild leap of the imagination, which was absolutely not warranted with the available evidence. In the first place, astronomy had always seen the planets as simply wandering stars, luminescent spheres on the firmament, only different from the other stars because they were moving, unlike the others. To suddenly claim the Earth was just another planet was not at all uncontroversial, and it still isn't. Secondly, we should be witnessing stellar parallax when the Earth circles the Sun. Stellar parallax. If the Earth is orbiting the Sun, then this should show in relative movements of closer and further away stars. Parallax is what we see when we drive by a landscape and closer by objects seem to be moving more quickly than those further off. Stellar parallax, then, should result from the movements of the Earth. Closer stars should show relative motion compared to further away stars. And this was simply not being observed at the time. However, Copernicus and his followers explained this away by saying that the stars were simply too far away for the effect to be observed. In doing so, he also laid the foundation for the insane size of the universe that science nowadays claims. The universe has been ballooning immensely, since the days of the Copernicus, It is for these reasons that Tycho Brahe published his An Introduction to the New Astronomy in 1588, proposing a geocentric, Neo-Ptolemaic system, where the Sun revolves around the Earth and the planets around the Sun. The Tychonic system is simpler than the Copernican one and definitely fitted the observable evidence of the time better than heliocentrism. It still does today. By explaining away the lack of stellar parallax, Copernicus was in fact not in accordance with Occam's razor, which claims that the simplest solution is usually best. However, the Tychonic and Copernican systems would compete with each other for centuries. The reason for this is mainly that, for some mysterious reason of their own, Kepler, Galileo and Newton would all three support heliocentrism. As a result, their fame based on their own achievements would rub off on heliocentrist credibility. And this was not warranted, because Kepler's elliptical orbits, Galileo's observations of Jupiter's moons and Newton's laws of gravity fit equally well with the Tychonic as the Copernican system. This point is really very vital to understand the history of the heliocentric deception. Stellar parallax, or. Then in 1838 something remarkable happened. Friedrich Bessel for the first time observed star movement. Shortly thereafter a number of stars were observed moving on the firmament relatively to other stars. This in itself was an interesting achievement, a testament to improving telescopes. However, Bessel and his contemporaries quickly jumped to the conclusion that this must be the stellar parallax that they had been looking for ever since Copernicus, no less than 3 centuries. But this was most likely a premature conclusion. After all, parallax is the seeming movement of closer by stars relatively to further away ones as the result of the Earth orbiting the Sun. The fact is that the star movements that Bessel and colleagues observed might have been caused by other reasons. However, by the authority of their great predecessors, astronomers and physicists were heavily invested in heliocentrism, even though the Tychonic system was, by all available evidence, still the preferable system. As a result, Bessel's observations were quickly jumped upon as having finally settled the issue and everybody rested assured heliocentrism was a fact. This led to some horrible disasters later on, most notably the Michelson-Morley catastrophe, culminating in the mystique of relativity and a wasted century for astronomy. We'll come back to that later. Meanwhile, stellar parallax was considered a given and ever since mainly a proud member of science's Hall of Fame. However, since these days astronomers have been faithfully logging the movements on the firmament of hundreds of thousands of stars. And now comes the great kicker, it transpires that about half of the logged stars show parallax, or at any rate, movement. But about half of each move in opposite directions. This is called positive and negative stellar parallax. However, if we are indeed witnessing stellar parallax as a result of the Earth's orbit around the Sun, all parallax should be in the same direction. As a result, we must conclude that the movement of the stars that we have been measuring ever since Bessel does not validate Copernican heliocentrism, but is consistent with Brahe's system. Furthermore, we cannot call these stars' movements parallax at all, because if these movements were caused by moves in the firmament, a result of the stars spinning around the Earth, or vice versa, all movement should still be in the same direction. We must conclude that the movement that we are seeing is caused by other factors, and cannot be called stellar parallax at all. And this also means that all our calculations of the distance of the stars are rubbish too. And this brings us full circle, because it was Copernicus himself who began the insane blowing up of the universe, based on nothing but speculation. Conclusion. We have been had. On a scale that is truly hard to fathom. The scientific community is guilty of covering up an immense scandal, that hundreds of thousands of confirmed star movements refute stellar parallax and therefore Copernican heliocentrism. Nobody dares touch this stuff, while it sits there sticking out like a very sore thumb indeed. This is far from the only example of a huge cover-up. The fact is that our entire science-based worldview is a fraud of truly monumental proportions. Here is another example before we close off. While Earthbound observation of the Sun can probably never conclusively show whether the Sun circles the Earth or vice versa, NASA should theoretically be able to do just that. Presumably, they are scouting the solar system as we speak, and it should be a piece of cake to have one of their satellites monitor the Sun's orbit, or the Earth's. They would only need a few months' worth of data to prove the point. Why, do you reckon, has this not happened? The implications of the shattering of such a paradigm are momentous, and we leave the reader to ponder both them and the here presented evidence.
And that's beyond this hole on the other side of the telescope, from Little Mark. And I think it's quite stunning. It should be an area of big hat on its floor.